the Demiki rig, the hover rig, the mid-strolling rig, pintail minnow, boot-tail minnow, fork-tail minnow, curly-tail minnow. When we talk about these types of baits and techniques, we're really talking about one of the most popular bass fishing techniques around today, and that's the jig and minnow. I've been fishing this technique for many years, and today I'm going to share with you the types of baits and setups I like to use according to the water temperature and the time of year to help you be successful fishing a jig and minnow presentation. Stay tuned.
Chain Flint Outdoors, brought to you by Omnia Fishing. Experience the most personalized tackle shopping on earth. And by MMA Fishing, fight the bite. And by Lead Time Batteries, the ultimate power solution for your boating needs.
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! What a big girl! Well, hey everyone, thanks for stopping back by the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the jig and minnow presentation. And I know that's a broad category. People call them Demiki rigs because of the different types of heads, or mid-strolling rigs, or hover strolling. I'm just encompassing this all into the same category of jig and minnow, because you're going to have some type of minnow bait with some type of hook and weight in it to get out there and catch fish. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through the baits that I like to use and the time of year and why. There's different types of setups, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the winter time, since it's winter right now. And if you're out there, if you got a chance here in Virginia, the ice just got off the lake, so you can get out there and fish. And these are just a couple of presentations that I like to use in the winter time with the jig and minnow presentation. So the first thing I tell you is I want to fish things a little bit slower in the winter. So you want a bait that has a little bit more resistance in the water, but I like to get that big bite on a bigger type of bait fish. So what I've been fishing, I'll be fishing when I go out the next few days, is this 6-inch coal shad. And this is from Berkeley. This is in a white flash, silver flash. Kind of mimics the bait fish in a couple of the lakes that I fish in. And I use this screw lock to put it in the nose and with a belly weight on the bottom. And the reason I do this is I want this bait to slowly go. I don't want it to head down. I want it to kind of drift down slower. And the idea for me fishing this is to fish it real slow, and I want it somewhat parallel to the bottom of the lake. I don't want to be dragging it so slow that it's, not parallel, but just fast enough to keep it parallel, keep it in that 10, 12, 14, 16 feet of water, whatever I can keep it in, to get those big bass to bite. Now what I'll do is I'll fish it real slow, and this paddle tail causes a resistance to keep it slow. And just every once in a while, I'll give it a pump, let it die and come down, and give it a pump, and then keep on real slow. A lot of times that little pump, that little difference, is when the bass will come up and get it. And sometimes you'll do that little pump, you'll see them come to get it, and they won't do it. So they'll go back down the bottom. So just keep your eye on the fish, especially if you got forward-facing sonar, to see what's most effective. Now, before I go any further, I mentioned forward-facing sonar. You don't need forward-facing sonar to be successful with this technique. I've been fishing this technique well before I had forward-facing sonar on my boat. So don't get hung up on if I don't have, forward-facing sonar, you're not going to be able to do this technique. You can. You know your lakes, and you know how to fish. So don't get hung up on that. This is a good technique any time of year. The other technique I'll use in the winter is just a regular boot tail. Now this is a Kitech Easy Shiner on a Dirty Jigs head. I like the Dirty Jigs head. I think I got a pack here. This is in a green color. But in the wintertime, Kitech Easy Shiner. And what I do with this is I'll throw it out there and I'll let it go almost all the way down to the bottom slowly. And then as soon as it gets almost to the bottom, I'm going to double pump it. You'll see it go boom, boom. And then I'm going to let it come back down. And what I'm trying to do is trying to mimic a dying bait fish. This time of year, the sensitive bait fish will start to die off depending on how the water temperature is. If it fluctuates a lot, gets warmer, colder, you'll get a lot of dying bait fish, and they will start to die off. And if you ever watch one, they'll kind of come up and come back down, come up. And that's what I'm trying to do when I use that technique, is try to mimic a dying bait fish and then bump, bump, pump, pump, and it'll come back down all the way back to the boat. And if you do have forward-facing sonar, you'll see them, they'll jump on it. When it goes to jerk away, boom, they'll nail it a lot of times. So that's the other technique. Boot tail minnow on this, because you want this to be really slow dragging down. So that's the winter time. Now, springtime is probably the time of year when I use these techniques the least, because the bass are just jumping on everything, feeding up, you know, and I'm a big spinnerbait fisherman, so spring's my favorite time to spinnerbait fish. Well, winter and spring. But one of the techniques I used to use, and I still use it today, but when I was a kid, my dad would give me this right here, just a jig head with a curly tail grub. And you can fish this, you're going to fish it around the shallows. You can pause it if you want, but if you just slow reel this in that 4 and 5, 6, 7 foot of water with that curly tailed grub, it's killer. It's a classic bait to catch bass on. Now this is more of a Damiki style jig head. You don't have to have that. You can have any type of jig head. A round ball will do fine. But just fishing this kind of fast in the shallows, 5, 6, 7 feet, where bass will pre-stage before they go up and spawn. Really great technique. And whatever bait color you want to use to match the hatch in your lake that they're feeding on. I'm a big fan of white, especially in the spring. And I like to use the pearl colored. And I'll tell you, it's just my classic favorite, just a good old Mr. Twister. Been using the Mr. Twister since I was 4 or 5 years old, almost 50 years. So really good bait in the springtime. I don't really kind of focus on targeting bass. I'm just going to fish an area like a big flat. Just cast in, fan cast out. Really good bait to catch some bass on. You'd be surprised how that curly tail grub works really good in the springtime. But now when it comes summertime and you got all that bait fish activity out there, all the fish have spawned and you got bait fish everywhere, this is a different game, right? So there's several techniques I like to use in the summertime. The first one I'll tell you that I just really fell in love with this last year is called the hover rig, and it's because of the actual type of bait that's a hook and weight setup. Now this is the hover rig on a spunk shad, a white spunk shad from Hog Farmer. And I'll show you that in just a minute. It's a pintail worm. But the success of this bait's based on what's in the hook setup, which is from Core Tackle. You've probably seen this, a lot of you've already seen this. I'm taking it apart here. The weight is inside the bait. There is the setup right there. The weight is inside the bait. And when this is in here, what this allows that bait to do, if I see bass hitting the top of the water or schooling, I throw it over there and this kind of spirals down real slow in front of those bass and they just jump up and grab it. Very effective hover rigging. That's a hover rig right there. But still a jig type thing in minnow, right? Same type of thing. But the hover rig is really, really good. And you could probably use it year round, but I thought it was really, really good in the summer, especially right after the bait fish started running around everywhere. Now, downfall, catch a lot of smalls, but you catch a lot of bigs too. So you get the good with the bad. There's nothing wrong with catching small fish. Don't get me wrong, but if you're just thinking you're going to catch giants, you're going to pick up some smalls on this. And once you learn how to rig it, and I'm just rigging it on the fly here, it kind of sets up like that, not perfectly straight the way I have it there. But you have to practice rigging it a little bit. So that is a hover rig, and I really like that in the summertime. The other type of setup I like, and I'm going to show you it like this, with just a regular straight jig head and pintail. And again, this is a spunk shad from Hog Farmer with a dirty jig head. And I like the rounded head, gives us a little bit of wobble this way when you're bouncing it, trying to keep it the depth you need it. Very effective. This tail is just, when you bounce your rod tip, the action on this drives the bass crazy. So I really like to use that when you're trying to get to that 10, 12, 14 foot. A lot of people refer to that as mid-strolling. That's the type of bait setup that I want to use in the summertime. Now, the other thing that I will use in the summertime, I will use a boot tail, but I like this around brush or some type of cover. Especially because this is set up, and you've seen me fish this a lot on my channel. And this is a Kitech Easy Shiner with an EWG setup. And you can see that hook, that's a 1/4 ounce. I usually use a 3/16. I'm just using a 1/4 ounce for the video here. And you can see this is somewhat snagless, right? Once the bass hit it, it helps you work through brush and grass a little bit. The boot tail, you can swim this a little bit faster. Try to get a little bit more action because the water's warmer. But the bass really love it. Now this is in a copperfield color, which is really one of my favorite colors in the Kitech lineup. Really good when the perch are spawning. This is a good color and a good setup because you're shallow up around sticks and brush and weeds. That EWG hook setup comes in really good. This is made by Flatlands Tackle. This setup is, and you can get them in different sizes, 2/0. This is a 3/0 setup on 5-inch. I didn't mention the sizes. I like 5-inch or 4-inch. I usually don't go any smaller, with the exception I'll talk to you in about just a minute. But 4 or 5-inch, and then 6-inch, the big one in the wintertime. You probably caught that when I showed you that big cull shad. So if it was pintail baits, the 2 pintail baits that I think are the best that I've caught a lot of fish on is the Crush City Freeloader from Rapala. Just crushed them on this, just like the name says, this fall, as well as the Hog Farmer. The reason I like the Hog Farmer, you can get this in a bigger size. The Crush City only comes in a 4.25. You can get a 5.5-inch and a 5.5, if I'm not mistaken, with the Spunk Shad from Hog Farmer. By the way, Missile Baits makes the Spunk Shad too. They're in partnership with Hog Farmer in different colors, so check out both Missile Baits and Hog Farmer. You can get those over on Omnia. Those are really good baits in the summer and in the fall. I really like them in the fall. One other summer bait that I'm going to mention here, and you're going to look at this and go, well, Shane, that's a fluke. Well, this is not a fluke. It's a different type of fluke-like bait, but it's set up a little bit different. And I can mid-stroll this, and this, if you can see, there's a notch here in the body. Mid-stroll this with this belly weight on here. And this is the Bruiser Bait Rad Shad. Got turned on to this, and I can mid-stroll this Rad Shad. And the reason I like it is I can keep it down in the right water column, and then bump it a few times and get some real hard left to right because of this jointed tail. And a lot of times I'll get that strike from a bass. I mean, I don't fish it like a fluke like this. I'm bouncing it like I would do a mid-strolling it, and then every once in a while I just give it a pop just to get that left to right. And this works really, really good. Caught a lot of bass off deeper points with this setup this last summer. So not fishing like a fluke, mid-strolling it, and then just giving a couple pops in the middle of it to get that quick left to right erratic action that a lot of times will get a bass to bite. So that's my summertime setups. Fall, basically the same with the exception. I don't use the hover rig as much in the fall, but one of the things I fished was very, very successful with this fall was the underspin with the pintail setup. And this is a dirty jig underspin. I mean, I just laid into them this fall with this. I probably caught 200, maybe even 250 quality bass. Caught 2 over 8 pounds this last fall on this underspin with the either the Spunk Shad or the Crush City Freeloader. Both of them were very effective. Again, in bait fish colors, use the bait fish colors that match the hatch in your lake, and I was very, very successful with those. Now, there's a lot of different baits out there, folks. These are just the ones that I've been very successful with. A couple, I'll just throw this out. There's been a couple Japanese ones that I've tried. The Drift Fry, 5.2-inch. I've caught a lot of fish, caught a few fish in the wintertime on this one, as well as last summer. The downfall of this bait, $12.99 for 5, pretty expensive. And then the Fish Roller Jerk Minnow, when it was really tough fishing one day, I got this out, and this is made by a company called Raid in Japan. When it was real finicky, I went to these smaller baits, and it worked out a little bit for me. I caught some fish. Again, I think these are $15. This little packet's cost $15 because they're bringing them in from Japan. And then the other one, I did catch a lot of fish on this, and this is not the color I caught them in, but from Fish Arrow, they got the spinners on the back of them. I just crushed a bunch of fish, a lot of smalls, a lot of 2-pounders. I didn't put a video on this. I probably will go find that footage. I did record it. But it was interesting, that flash on the tail. I caught a lot of fish this summer. So just some things to think about. There's lots and lots of brands. I didn't even go into not even 1% of the different types of minnow baits that are out there that you can use for jig and minnow presentation. Well, hey folks, I just want to go over these presentations. I thought it'd be helpful for you. You can fish this year round. A lot of people think it's the best in the winter. A lot of people think it's best in the summer. I think it's a great bait year round. Just knowing what to fish and where to fish it at. Again, you don't need forward-facing sonar to be successful with this technique. So, well, hey folks, thanks again for stopping by. And until next time, tight lines and good luck fishing.